women.
A woman's work is never done, and men do have such fun. The free delights of women's rights, we want them, everyone.
A village suffragette walked up to International Workers of the World leader Bill Haywood and asked,
"Do you think women should have the vote?"
Sure, they can have mine.
Way down south in Greenwich Village, there they wear no fancy frillage, for the ladies of the square all wear smocks and bob their hair.
For the artistic bobbing of women's hair, see Charles, the village barber at 46 6th Avenue.
There the girls are unconventional and the men are unintentional. The ladies buy the eats in Washington Square.
At Rossi Brothers Confectioners, 58 Washington Square South, 75% of our cigarettes are sold to women. No criticism or hard looks.
For their part, men stopped wearing neckties and hats and had themselves psyched to rid themselves of feelings of male superiority, libido-repressing complexes, or homosexual inclinations.
Way down south in Greenwich Village, in the Freud and Jung and Brill age, here are modernist complexes and the intermediate sexes. Fairyland's not far from Washington Square.
In 1906, villagers founded the A Club, the prototype of village radical organizations, a cooperative housing venture where everybody was a liberal, if not a radical, and all for labor and the arts.
The A Club was followed by a flood of similarly radical organizations. The Liberal Club, the Lucy Stone League, the Feminist Alliance, the Women's Peace Party, the Women's Trade Union League, the Equality League of Self-Supporting Women, the Men's League for Women's Suffrage, the National Women's Party, the American Birth Control League, and Heterodoxy, a discussion club for women with unorthodox views. Among the village's unorthodox women were
Suffragist Inez Milholland.
The most beautiful girl who ever bit the wrist of a policeman.
Labor activist Elizabeth Gurley Flynn, the rebel girl of the international workers of the world.
"She brings courage, pride, and joy to the fighting rebel boy, for it's great to fight for freedom with a rebel girl."
Socialist and birth control activist Margaret Sanger.
Every woman should be absolute mistress of her own body, no gods and no masters.
Margaret Anderson, editor of The Little Review.
Anarchism and art are in the world for exactly the same kind of reason.
Lawyer, sculptor, actress, and activist Ida Rao.
Half Nietzschean, half Marxian, half anarchist, believing in free love and a freed proletariat.
And anarchy's most celebrated spokesperson, Emma Goldman.
I am an anarchist, wherefore I will not rule, and also ruled I will not be. Anarchism stands for the liberation of the human mind from the dominion of religion, the liberation of the human body from the dominion of property, liberation from the shackles and restraints of government.
The sexual double standard was a topic of special sensitivity to Miss Goldman.
Love is the strongest and deepest element in all life, the harbinger of hope, of joy, of ecstasy, the freest, the most powerful molder of human destiny. How can such an all-compelling force be synonymous with that poor little state and church-begotten weed, marriage? At this time, I would like to invite any man present who has never experienced premarital sexual relations to stand up.
Other village luminaries included
Anarchist Hippolyte Havel.
You all talk like goddamn bourgeois, pigs.
Max Eastman, a poet with a PhD from Columbia, founder of the Men's League for Women's Suffrage, and handsome as a fool.
Philosophical anarchist Hutchins Hapgood.
I am accused of having an unreasoning and unreasonable interest in all things that are generally condemned by the community, such as Cubist art, the IWW, criminals, Mrs. Pankhurst, Mayor Gaynor, and the turkey trot.
The charismatic socialist Jacob Cook, a figure of gigantic creative energy, superhuman, with a Promethean fire shining in his face, and his wife, writer, suffragist, and socialist, Susan Glasspool.
She was always Susan Glassfell. She was never Mrs. Cook.
Ashcan artists John Sloan, Robert Miner, Robert Henri, George Bellows, and Arthur B. Davis.
Post-Impressionist artist Marsden Hartley, Charles Demuth, William Zorak, and the high priestess of the ultra-modernist Marguerite Zorak. It's hard to understand why such a nice girl would paint such wild pictures.
The beautiful young poet, Edna St. Vincent Millay.
The world stands out on either side, no wider than the heart is wide. Above the world is stretched the sky, no higher than the soul is high.
Millay, raised in the Bohemian tradition by an indulgent mother who gave her daughters all the luxuries and some of the necessities of life, was frequently in need of funds.
Dear Harriet Monroe, would you mind paying me now instead of on publication for those so stunning verses of mine which you have? I have become very, very thin and have taken to smoking Virginia tobacco. Wistfully yours, Edna St. Vincent Millay.
Modernist poet Alfred Kringborg.
Dear, dear quill, dear quillist, why spill, why spill? Oh, why? Spill, spillest, the lima beans, the beans of lime, the lime of beans, the loony, lilting lima beans, yours hungrily, A.K.
Juna Barnes.
They gave her hurried shoves this way and that, her body shock abbreviated as a city cat. She lay out listlessly like some small mug of beer gone flat.
And Mina Loy.
Spawn of fantasies, silting the appraisable pig Cupid, his rosy snout rooting erotic garbage.
A young and aspiring poet and playwright, Irish-American Eugene O'Neill.
Darkly handsome, but somber and sallow, as a down and out of road to Jesus by the Salvation Army.
And the golden boy of Greenwich Village, labor journalist and poet John Reed.
Yet we are free who live in Washington Square. We dare to think as uptown wouldn't dare, blazing our nights with arguments uproarious. What care for we for an old, dull world censorious, when each is sure he'll fashion something glorious? Oh, life is a joy to a broth of a boy at 42 Washington Square.
Village revolutionaries, even the fiery Emma Goldman, desired joy as well as justice.
I did not believe that a cause which stood for a beautiful ideal, for release and freedom from conventions and prejudice, should demand denial of life and joy. I insisted that our cause could not expect me to behave as a nun, nor turn our movement into a cloister. If it meant that, I did not want it. I want freedom, the right to self-expression, everybody's right to beautiful, radiant things.
In 1911, Bohemia received its most distinctive mouthpiece in the form of a monthly magazine founded by Dutch socialist Piet Vlog and devoted to the interest of the working people. It was called The Masses, and it would eventually become known as the conscience of the era, documenting and graphically illustrating, perhaps more than any other publication, village culture and ideology.
5 cents a copy.
When Black abandoned the project in 1912, the Masses contributors turned to Max Eastman.
You are elected editor of the Masses. No pay.
Aided by John Reed, Eastman proclaimed its editorial policy.
This magazine is owned and published cooperatively by its editors. It has no dividends to pay, and nobody is trying to make money out of it. A revolutionary and not a reform magazine. A magazine with a sense of humor and no respect for the respectable. A magazine whose final policy is to do as it pleases and conciliate nobody, not even its readers.
When literary critic Floyd Dale came on board as assistant editor, he expressed the magazine's mission more succinctly.
It stood for fun, truth, beauty, realism, freedom, peace, feminism, revolution.
Contributing editors, however, were never in total agreement regarding the magazine's policies or lack thereof. According to Floyd Dale,
At the monthly editorial meetings, the literary editors were ranged on one side of all questions and the artists on the other. The squabbles between literary and art editors were usually over the question of intelligibility and propaganda versus artistic freedom. Some of the artists held a smoldering grudge against the literary editors, and believed that Max Eastman and I were infringing the true freedom of art by putting jokes or titles under their pictures. John Sloan and Art Young were the only ones of the artists who were verbally articulate. But Art Young sided with the literary editors usually, and John Sloan, a very rigorous and combative personality, spoke up strongly for the artists.
A typical meeting of contributing editors: Art Young, George Bellows, Arturo Giovannitti, Max Eastman, and John Sloan attending.
To me, this magazine exists for socialism. That's why I give my drawings to it. Anybody who doesn't believe in a socialist policy, as far as I go, can get out.
The Masses has no business with a policy. It's not a political paper, and will do better without any platforms. Its policy is the expression of its contributors. They have the right to change their minds continually.
This paper belongs to the proletariat. It is the recording secretary of the revolution in the making. It is an earnest and living thing, a battle call, a shout of defiance, a blazing torch running madly through the night to set afire the powder magazines of the world.
The Masses has certainly as pronounced an editorial policy as any paper in the country. And as long as I am the editor and raise money for it, it will have.
I resign.
For the next 4 years, the magazine's manifestos, editorials, illustrations, fiction, poetry, and political cartoons launched a full frontal assault on capitalism, imperialism, colonialism, organized religion, racism, sexism, war, exploitation and oppression of workers, moral hypocrisy, and various strains of corruption in American society.
There's a war in Patterson, but it's a curious kind of war. All the violence is the work of one side, the mill owners. Their servants, the police, club unresisting men and women and ride down law-abiding crowds on horseback. Their paid mercenaries, the armed detectives, shoot and kill innocent people. Their tool, Judge Carroll, deals out heavy sentences to peaceful pickets that the police net gathers up. They control absolutely the police, the press, the courts. Opposing them are about 25,000 striking silk workers, and their weapon is the picket line. Let me tell you what I saw in Patterson, and then you tell me which side of this struggle is anarchistic and contrary to American ideals. John Reed, 1913.
The world can no more be saved by a single ism, syndicalism, socialism, single taxism, anarchism, or whatever, than it was saved by a single God. Along with theology, we have urged the dumping of theological methods of thought. Max Eastman.
Stop sending us the Masses. We never ordered it, and we do not want it. Columbia University Library Bookstore, February 1913.
In June 1913, an essay by Max Eastman accused the Associated Press of suppressing information about the West Virginia coal miners' strike, illustrated by a cartoon by Art Young, featuring the news as a reservoir poisoned at the source by a figure labeled the Associated Press, which was pouring lies into the water.
Eastman and Young were subsequently sued by the Associated Press and indicted for criminal libel.
The Friends arranged a mass meeting in their behalf in Cooper Union on March the 5th. 2,500 people packed the Great Hall there. A year after the accusation, the indictment was dismissed.
Art Young's cartoon set a new standard in social and political satire.
Gee, Annie, look at the stars. Thick as bed bugs.
Glory, I'm tired.
There you go, you're tired. And here I be standing over a hot stove all day and you working in a nice, cool sewer.
The Masses also covered cultural events like the 1913 Armory Show exhibition of modern art, although Ash Kenner John Sloan was possibly not the most sympathetic reviewer.
There was a cubic man, and he walked a cubic mile, and he found a cubic sixpence upon a cubic stile. He had a cubic cat, which caught a cubic mouse, and they all lived together in a little cubic house.
The Masses was most vociferous in its opposition to the war in Europe and America's participation in it.
This is not a crusade against militarism, but it is a scramble for spoils. Already in America, those citizens who oppose the entrance of their country into the European melee are called traitors, and those who protest against the curtailing of our meager rights of free speech are spoken of as dangerous lunatics. John Reed, 1914.
This is not a war for democracy. It did not originate in a dispute about democracy, and it is unlikely to terminate in a democratic settlement. Max Eastman, June 1917.
By this time, the masses had been banned from the subway and elevated stands of New York, suppressed by the magazine distributing company in Boston, the United News Company of Philadelphia, and the government of Canada.
In April 1916, Mary Carolyn Davies penned an acerbic poem to the women of England.
While you weep for your men, blind, legless, broken, or only your dead, perhaps, while you despair, we dance and shop and feel annoyance when upon the street they hold a box of pennies in our faces, and you raise your heads and wonder at our callousness. We women have a right to dance and shop and to refuse you pennies. We have never, yet, pinned a feather on a boy and killed him.
Mass's poets also expressed more personal preoccupations.
In January 1916, Susan Glaspell published a memorial ode to labor journalist Joe O'Brien, who had died in October 1950.
Joe, it's strange without you. I do not like it. I want to see you coming down the street in the gay woolly stockings and that bright green sweater. I want you to open the door of my house and brightly call, "Hello!" I want to sit over a drink with you and talk about the IWW and the damned magazines and the Germans. I want to argue with you about building bookshelves and planting bulbs. I want awfully to tell you about a joke I heard yesterday. And now that you are gone, I want intensely to find you.
In the same year, O'Neill published a poem rife with war tropes that may have also alluded to his Virginia assault on the commercial theater.
My soul is a submarine. My aspirations are torpedoes. I will hide unseen beneath the surface of life, watching for ships, dull, heavy-laden merchant ships, rust-eaten, grimy galleons of commerce, wallowing with obese assurance, too sluggish to fear or wonder, mocked by the laughter of waves and the spit of disdainful spray. I will destroy them because the sea is beautiful.
Theater, in fact, was increasingly dominating conversations among the artists and intellectuals of Greenwich Village, who were performing as well as documenting the Cultural Revolution through a wide array of political performances, mass meetings, lectures, parades, demonstrations, and most famously the Patterson Strike Pageant of 1913, a recreation of the Silk Workers' Strike staged by John Reed, designed by Robert Edmund Jones, and funded by Mabel Dodge.
But it was among the sand dunes of Provincetown, Massachusetts, in the summer of 1915, that the theater, which became the dramatic wing of revolutionary Bohemia around the time of the First World War, was launched.
They called themselves the Provincetown Players, after the Cape Cod fishing village that the Greenwich Village Bohemians had adopted as their official summer home. And in the summer of 1915, the roster of transplanted thespians coincided nearly precisely with the contributors to the masses, including Eastman, Dell, Reed, Hapgood, Cook, and Glasgow. And the plays they performed were drawn directly from the pages of the masses and/or village life.
Cook and Glaspell's suppressed desires lampooned the village's obsession with Freud.
Neath Voices, ironically entitled Constancy, satirized relations between the famously unfaithful village couple, Mabel Dodge and John Reed.
Wilbur Daniel Steele's contemporaries dramatized labor activist Frank Tannenbaum's invasion of a Fifth Avenue church, relocating the action to Jerusalem in 33 AD.
And Cook's Change Your Style spoofed the realist-modernist conflict among contemporary artists.
The following summer, the players revived all 4 plays and staged 10 new ones, including 2 plays about the sea by Eugene O'Neill.
The tide was in, and it washed under and around us, spraying through the holes in the floor, giving us the rhythm and the flavor of the sea, while the big dying sailor talked to the life he'd always wanted, deep in the land, where you'd never see a ship or smell the sea. It is not merely figurative language to say the old wharf shook with applause.
And Susan Glaspell's haunting trifles, depicting the isolation, abuse, and retribution of a Midwest farm wife, created a similar stir, and in a burst of enthusiasm, the players formally organized, electing George Cram Cook as president.
Max Eastman and John Reed produced a constitution and bylaws that mirrored the Mass's editorial policy. The Provincetown Players was to be a revolutionary theater bent on personal and social transformation, dedicated to free artistic expression by American playwrights, unfettered by the demands of the commercial theatrical establishment, and dedicated to collective creation.
The Players rented a space at 139 McDougal Street.
When, in the fall of 1916, they launched their anti-commercial theatrical crusade.
Almost immediately, however, discord erupted within the group regarding producing policies and artistic differences.
Charter member Lucy Huffaker wrote to her husband, Edward Goodman, that internal troubles were already seething within the group.
On December 2nd, 1916, Mary Heaton Vorse reported to John Reed that the players are going along their thorny way. Everyone has a grouch or is drunk. Some are both drunk and grouchy.
On December 11th, Cook wrote to Glassville expressing his fear that the players may not survive their first season.
It was at this time that Glassville began working on a short play that would open at the Playwrights Theater in March 1917. It was set in the office of a Journal of the Social Revolution, and the journal and the play was called The People.
Edward Wills, editor of The People.
Oscar Tripp, associate editor.
Tom Howe, printer.
Sarah, a contributing editor.
The artist. The earnest approach.
The light touch.
The anarchist.
The philosopher.
The woman from Idaho.
The boy from Georgia.
The man from the Cape.
Oscar, what are you doing?
I'm writing.
Why?
Because, Tom, my boy, I am a writer.
I thought you said there wasn't going to be another issue of The People.
I am writing.
If this paper can't go on, I need to know it. I could get a job on the Evening World. Can it go on?
I don't see how it can, but many a time I haven't seen how it could, and it did. Doubtless it will go on, and it will see days much worse than these, and so much worse than these that we will say, the good old days of March 1917.
But can it pay salaries?
Oh no, I think not. But we must work because we love our work.
We must eat because we love our food.
You'll know soon. We're having a meeting this morning.
Oh God, let me know when it's over.
Is this the office of the people?
Uh-huh.
I came to see the author of those wonderful words
Which wonderful words.
about moving toward the beautiful distances.
Oh, those are Mr. Will's wonderful words.
Could I see him?
I'm sorry, he isn't in at the moment. He's just back from California, won't be at the office till a little later.
He's been to California. He has just ridden across this country.
Yes, long trip. He's very cross over the phone.
Oh, no. I think you're mistaken.
Is there anything I can help you with?
I could see Mr. Wills later, couldn't I? When he gets in.
Well, yes, I guess. Of course, he'll be very busy. Is it important?
It is important. At least, yes, it is important.
Very well, then. He'll be in later.
I'll stand down on the street and watch the people go by.
What?
The people. It's so wonderful to see them. So many of them. Don't you often just stand and watch them?
No, madam, not often. I'm too busy editing a magazine about them.
Oh, do you help Mr. Wills edit this magazine?
I am associate editor of The People.
How wonderful. It must be a wonderful thing for you to write in the same room with him.
Well, I don't know. Perhaps it is a wonderful thing for him, too. I am Oscar Tripp, the poet. Blue eyes, brown eyes, green and gold eyes, eyes that question, doubt, and envy. Sudden flashing, cold, hard, bold eyes. Here's your answer. I am I.
I'll come back later.
Ed not here yet?
Hello, Sarah. No, not yet.
he get any money?
Doesn't look like it. He was snappish over the phone. Guess he's for giving it up this time.
I don't want to give it up. Do you want to give it up, Oscar?
Well, it's not what we want. It's what the people want. And there aren't enough of them who want us.
The fault must lie with us.
I don't think so. The fault lies with the failure to...
I'll tell you where the fault lies. We should give more space to pictures and less to stupid reading matter. The meeting is this morning, right?
We have given too much expensive white paper to pictures and too little to reading matter, especially to poets. Poetry, that's where the fault lies.
I'll tell you where the fault lies. Here and here. Just this. Everybody plugging in for his own thing. Nobody caring enough about the thing as a whole.
I'll tell you where the fault lies. Here, this, the editor-in-chief returning from a long trip, and the first golden words that fall from his lips are words of censure for his faithful subordinates.
How are you, Ed?
Right.
I've heard that we may have to discontinue.
It seems we might as well.
Now let me tell you what the trouble's been and how you can remedy it. The people has been afraid of being serious. But you deal with ideas, and you must do it soberly. There's a place for good, earnest journal of protest. But all this levity, this foolery.
I'm not late, am I? Tell me, the news I'm hearing isn't true.
If it's bad, it's true.
Well, it's an awful pity, but you've been too damn serious. A lighter touch. That's what the people needs. You're as heavy as mud. Try to while longer along more frivolous lines.
Now, the philosopher and the anarchist will tell us what's the matter with us.
Too damn bourgeois. You should print it on the cover of every issue. To hell with the bourgeoisie. Pigs.
The trouble with the magazine is efficiency.
Efficiency? Dear God.
Should be more carelessly done, and then it would be more perfectly done. You should be less definite, and then you would have more definiteness. You should not know what it is you want, and then you would find what you are after.
You talk as if we're not a success. But just last night I heard of a woman in Bronxville who keeps the people under her bed so her husband won't know she's reading it.
If we had been a success, that woman would prop the people on the pillow.
It was my pictures got us under the bed.
I was definitely told it was my talk with God that put us under the bed.
Can you not see that she puts you under the bed because you yourselves have made concessions to the bourgeoisie? Cows, geese.
We should print more pictures.
We should print more poetry.
It should be more
It
serious.
should be more frivolous.
Hello, is this the office of the people?
No, this is a lunatic asylum.
Oh, you're joking. I came to see the editor. I want to tell him.
So many people are telling me so many things. Could you possibly come back later to tell me yours?
Oh, sure. I know you must be very busy.
Oh, yes.
Speaking for the
Speaking for the writers,
a more
I was
serious
saying,
matter.
before we go any further,
Speaking for the anarchists.
Excuse me, is this the office of the people?
You have come to tell us something about this magazine.
Yes.
Yes?
There are a number ahead of you. You'll have to wait your turn. I'll be glad to see you as soon as I can. Would you be so good as to wait in the outside office?
the paper company bill has got to be paid today, not to mention the rent.
You could pay your bills if you were not afraid to be serious.
You could pay your bills if you were not afraid to be gay.
A more earnest approach would save the people.
A lighter touch would turn the trick.
To hell with the bourgeoisie! Apes!
Efficiency has put out the spark.
Well, as long as the spark appears to be good and out, may I, in the name of efficiency, officially adjourn this meeting so that we may go ahead with our work?
There would be greater efficiency in our remaining. There would be form. You have lacked form.
You have lacked courage, donkeys!
It would be illuminating, Lucy, to hear you run through the animal kingdom, toads, crocodiles, a number of things you haven't mentioned yet. But the animal kingdom is large, and we have work to do.
You lack form in your work. By form, I do not mean what you think I mean. I mean that particular significance of the insignificant, which is the fundamental...
We couldn't understand it. Why tell us?
No, you couldn't understand it.
Rest in peace. centipedes.
What's the matter with us is our friends.
Well, to be or not to be? I guess it's up to you, Ed.
Just what would we be going on for? Precisely what do we do? Aside from getting under the bed in Bronxville. Now and then, something particularly rotten is put over, and we have a story that gets a rise out of a few people, but we don't change anything.
We had another hope. We were going to express ourselves so simply and so truly that we would be expressing the people.
The people. I looked at them all the way across this continent. They don't want to be expressed. The longer I think about it, the more ridiculous it seems to me that we should be giving our lives to The People, a journal of the social revolution. Certainly we better cut the subtitle. The social revolution is dead.
Instead of a subtitle, we could have a design. Much better.
This is a long way from what you felt last year, Ed. You had a vision.
You
then.
can't keep a vision in this office. It's easy enough to have a beautiful feeling about the human race when none of it is around. The trouble about doing anything for your fellow man is that you have to do it with so many of them. Oh, of course, that isn't fair. We care. Even Oscar cares. Or he wouldn't work the way he has. But what does our caring amount to?
Let me read you something, Ed. We are living now. We shall not be living long. No one can tell us we shall live again. This is our little while. This is our chance. And we take it like a child who comes from a dark room to which he must return. Comes for one sunny afternoon to a lovely hillside, and finding a hole, crawls in there till after the sun is set. I want that child to know the sun is shining upon flowers in the grass. I want him to know it before he has to go back to the room that is dark. I wish I had pipes to call him to the hilltop of beautiful distances. I myself could see further if he were seeing at all. Perhaps I can call you, you who have dreamed and dreaming know, and knowing care. Move from the things that hold you. If you move, others will move. Come now, before the sun goes down. You wrote that, Ed.
Yes, I wrote it. And do you want to know why I wrote it? I wrote it because I was sore at Oscar and wanted to write something to make him feel ashamed of himself.
I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that's true. Maybe you think that's why you wrote it, but it's not the reason. You wrote it because it's a living truth, and it moved in you, and you had to say it.
Who are you?
I'm one of the people. I've lived a long way off. I heard that call, and I had to come.
I've come too. I'm from Georgia. I read it and I didn't want to stay at school any longer. I said, I want something different and bigger, something more like this. I heard about your not being able to sell your paper on the newsstands just because lots of people don't want anything different and bigger. And I said to myself, I'll sell the paper. I'll go and sell it on the streets. And I got so excited about it that I didn't even wait for the dance. There was a dance that night, and I had a girl too.
The idealists are calling upon the intellectuals and calling them.
And what did you leave, my friend?
My oyster bed. I'm from the Cape. I had a chance to go in on an oyster bed. I read what you wrote. A woman who had stopped in an automobile left it, and I said to myself, I'm nothing but an oyster myself. Guess I'll come to life.
But what did you come here for?
Well, for the rest of it.
The rest of what?
The rest of what you've got.
This is awkward for Ed.
I haven't got anything more to give.
But you made us think you had. You led us to believe you had.
Very awkward.
You said, I called to you. You who have dreamed, and dreaming know, and knowing care. Well, 3 of us are here. From the south and the east and the west, we've come because you made us want something we didn't have. Made us want it so much we had to move the way we thought was toward it, before the sun goes down.
Poor Ed.
I wish you'd shut up, Oscar.
You shouldn't have called personally. You should have sent your ideas by mail.
Oscar, try and act as if you had a soul.
Oh, I think he really has. At least he has a heart. It's only that he feels he must be witty. But you're not going to let us just go away again, are you? He gave up his oyster bed, and this boy didn't even wait for the dance. And me, I gave up my tombstone. Yes, my tombstone. It had always been a saying in our family, he won't even have a stone to mark his grave. They said it so much and so solemnly that I thought it meant something. I sew, plain sewing, but I've often said to myself, well, at least I'll have a stone to mark my grave. And then there was a man who had been making speeches to the miners. I lived in a town in Idaho, and he had your magazine, and he left it in the store. And the storekeeper said to me when I went there for thread, here, you like to read. Don't you want this? I wish you'd take it away, because if some folks in town see it, they'll think I'm not all I should be. He meant the cover. That was my cover. So I took it home, and when my work was done that night, I read your wonderful words. They're like a spring. If you've lived in a dry country, you know what I mean. And they made me know that my tombstone was as dead as, well, a tombstone. So I had to have something to take its place.
Talk to him. Tell him about it. Come on, Oscar, let's get a drink.
My folks don't even know where I am. I just came.
He didn't even stay for the dance.
But I'll be glad to sell the papers. Here, shall I take these? And I'll stop people in the street and tell them why I'm selling them.
No, you can't do that. You'll be arrested.
Oh, let him sell them. What's the difference about the law if you have the right idea?
I know the difference between law and justice.
There's something sure about an oyster bed.
You come with us and have a drink. Something sure about that, too.
Yes, tell us about your oyster bed. You too, Joe. Let's have a drink.
I'm sorry for you.
Why?
Because you have the brain to say those things, and not the spirit to believe them. I didn't say them, and yet I got something you haven't got. Because I know the thing you said was true.
Will you sit down somewhere?
No, I'll go. I don't know why I should be disappointed. I suppose it's not fair to ask you to be as big as the truth you saw. Why should I expect you would be?
I'm sorry. I suppose now you'll regret the tombstone.
Oh, no. No, it was wonderful to ride across the country and see all the people. The train moving along seemed to make something move in me. I had thoughts not like any thoughts I've ever had before. Your words like a spring breaking through the dry country of my mind. I thought of how you call your paper the Journal of the Social Revolution. And I said to myself, this is the social revolution. Knowing that your tombstone doesn't matter. Seeing, that's the social revolution.
Seeing?
A plain, dark trees off at the edge. Against the trees, a little house and a big barn. A flat piece of land fenced in. Stubble, furrows. Horses waiting to get in at the barn. Cows standing around a pump. cow yard, water tank. One straight street of a little town. The country so still it seemed dead. The trees like hopes that had been given up. The graveyards on hills, they come so fast. I noticed them first because of my tombstone. But I got to thinking about the people. The people who spent their whole lives right near the places where they are now. There's something in the thought of them, like the cows standing around the pump. So patient. It kind of hurts. And their pleasures, a flat field fenced in. And your great words carried me to other great words. I thought about Lincoln and what he said of the few of the dead. And I said it over and over. I said things and I didn't know the meaning of them till after I'd said them. I said, the truth that opens from our lives as water opens from the rocks. And then I knew what that truth was. Let us here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain. I mean, all of them. Let life become what it may become, so beautiful that everything that is back of us was worth everything it cost.
So, Ed, if we're gonna, sorry to butt in, but I can still get that job on the Evening World. If this paper's gonna stop, I've got to know.
Stop. This paper can't stop.
Can't stop? Last I heard, it couldn't do anything else.
Well, that was long ago.
Got something to go on with then?
Yes. Something to go on with.
I see. I'm glad, but I've got to be sure. This is the truth?
The truth. The truth that opens from our lives as water opens from the rocks.
Nobody really needs a tombstone.
In the Princeton Players' production of The People, the role of Edgar Wills was performed by George Franker. Susan Glasgow performed The Woman from Idaho. The play was directed by newcomer Nina Moyes, a young but very capable stage director who had fortuitously appeared in January 1917 to bring harmony and greater professional standards to the fledgling company.
The magazine that provided the model for The People, however, did not fare as well.
In April 1917, the United States entered World War I.
Over there, send the word over there, that the Yanks are coming, and we won't come back till it's over there.
It was paradise for the slogan makers.
100% Americanism.
Down with the Huns!
Kill the Kaiser!
Make the world safe for democracy!
In June 1917, the U.S. Congress passed the Espionage Act, which prohibited any attempt to interfere with military operations, to support U.S. enemies during wartime, to promote insubordination in the military, or to interfere with military recruitment.
All actions that the masses had been energetically pursuing since 1914.
In July 1917, the U.S. Post Office declared August's issue of the Masses in violation of the Espionage Act.
In October, the magazine's second-class mail privilege was rescinded. The November-December 1917 issue was its last.
Even though the magazine had stopped publishing, a grand jury indicted Eastman, Dell, Reed, artists Art Young and Henry J. Glintingkamp, poet Josephine Bell, and business manager Merrill Rogers for conspiracy to obstruct the recruiting and enlistment service of the United States by publishing seditious articles, cartoons, and poems. If convicted, they face sentences of imprisonment up to 20 years each and fines up to $10,000 each.
The criminal material included
Eastman's editorial, A Question, which praised the moral courage of conscientious objectors to the draft.
The publication of letters from conscientious objectors in English prisons.
Glintenkamp's cartoon depicting death measuring a drafted soldier for a coffin.
Reed's article entitled Knit a Straitjacket for Your Soldier Boy, citing the great frequency of mental disease among soldiers.
Bell's poem, A Tribute, dedicated to imprisoned anarchists Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman.
Young's anti-war cartoon entitled Having Their Fling, which depicted a mad orgy of men representing the press, the pulpit, politics, and business, with an orchestra playing on war instruments and led by the devil in the background.
Provincetown play reader Edna Kenton attended the trial with Edna St. Vincent Millay, poet and Provincetown actress. Engaged at the time to Floyd Dell, but distracted by the more dashing Reed, who had just returned from Russia.
We were very tired. We were very merry. We had gone back and forth all night on the ferry. We lay on a hilltop underneath the moon, and the whistles kept blowing, and the dawn came soon.
After 2 failures to reach a verdict, the case was finally dismissed.
In the spring of 1918, Eastman, Dell, Young, Reed, and others from the masses' editorial staff created a new journal, The Liberator, to carry on a tradition of the masses, still Marxist and pacifist in perspective.
Meanwhile, its dramatic wing, the Provincetown Players, remained in the village for 6 years, producing nearly 100 plays by more than 50 American playwrights, among all of whom have also contributed fiction, essays, or poetry to the masses. The Provincetown repertory was noted for artistic experimentation in dramaturgy and scenography, as well as for cogent social critique, and would become largely heralded as the birthplace of modern American drama.
Its leading female playwright, Susan Glaspell, who contributed 11 plays to the Provincetown repertory and won a Pulitzer Prize in 1931, crafted powerful critiques of women's experience under patriarchy and of the suppression of free thought and speech in America during the World War I era.
Its leading male playwright, Eugene O'Neill, contributed 14 plays to the Provincetown Rep, taking the Players to Broadway with The Emperor Jones and The Harry April, eventually becoming the most celebrated American playwright, winner of 4 Pulitzers and the Nobel Prize.
Internal wrangling and conflicting goals eventually brought about the departure of Cook and Glaspell to Greece in spring 1922. In 1924, O'Neill, in partnership with designer Robert Edmund Jones and critic Kenneth McGowan, organized a new company, the Experimental Theatre Incorporated, which began producing at the McDougal Street Theatre, now commonly referred to as the Provincetown Playhouse, in 1924.
The Liberator experienced similar changes. Eastman resigned in 1922, and the new editor, Floyd Dell, tried to move the magazine in a less political direction. When money got tight, however, the Communist Party of America effected a friendly takeover. Robert Miner became editor, and in 1924, the Liberator merged with 2 other communist periodicals to form a new magazine, the Workers' Monthly.
As for the village, the golden age of Bohemia seemed to end with the war.
By 1924, Warren G. Harding had brought normalcy to America. Suffrage had been granted, but flappers replaced feminists as the new female icons.
John Reed and Jig Cook were dead, buried in Russia and Greece, respectively.
Emma Goldman and Alexander Berkman had been deported.
Max Eastman was in Russia, becoming increasingly disenchanted with Marxism.
Juno Barnes and Edna St. Vincent Millay had migrated to Paris, where Bohemia seemed to have relocated.
But perhaps the Bohemia whose conscience was the masses and whose dramatic wing was the Provincetown Players was never quite as wild or as different as legend would have it, as Susan Glaspell remembered it.
We were supposed to be a sort of special group. Radical, wild, bohemians, we've even been called. But it seems to me we were a particularly simple people who sought to arrange life for the thing we wanted to do. I never knew simpler, kinder, or more real people than I've known in Greenwich Village. I like in memory the flavor of those days when one could turn down Greenwich Avenue to the office of the masses, argue with Max or Floyd or Jack Reed, then, after an encounter with some fanatic at the Liberal Club, on to the working girls' home, or if the check had come, to the Braveheart. Jig loved to sit in the cellar of the Braveheart. He had his own corner, and the waiters smiled when he came in.